Welcome to tonight's special edition of Hockey Central. As you know, all NHL games are postponed until Saturday. The players made the decision earlier today. David Amber, Elliotte Freidman, Chris Johnston will update us on the chronology of events, not just in the NHL. It's happening, of course, in the NBA and Major League Baseball elsewhere. Hazel Mae and Paul Jones are joining us to represent Major League Baseball and the NBA. That's the hashtag, The Conversation. We'd love your opinion on this. I think that's the biggest thing for all of us. Saw it last night. Imagine sitting at home watching Hrudey do his magical thing and David Amber and the crew do their thing, and watching the hockey. Two of the three games were fantastic. I can never get over how brilliantly organized everything is, and yet all of it was fundamentally sad. Tonight is not sad. Tonight is a night where we're all in this together, and that's why the hashtag, we'll monitor that. We'll be on through the night, not only with Hockey Central, but also into Sportsnet Central, which carries on till 10 o'clock this evening. So let's get right to it. David, why don't you take us through the day as it happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Joined by Elliotte Freidman and Chris Johnston. And guys, this could be a seminal moment, a great opportunity for all of us to reflect on everything that's going on in the world right now. And before we get into deconstructing exactly how the day unfolded and where we're at, I wanted to get your guys' personal feelings too, because I have a lot of feelings built up about this situation. And again, it's interesting because Evander Kane, we interviewed him yesterday, and he kind of went as far as to say, please, you know, we're throwing you an olive branch here, help us out. And he put out there the responsibility of deconstructing racism can't fall squarely on the shoulders exclusively of those burdened by it. And he was basically calling out for the white allies in the league, the white players, to step up and make a statement. And it was a pretty firm statement made, as we're not going to have games now either today or tomorrow. You know, start with you, Chris. Your feelings on this big announcement today?
Well, I feel much better today than I did last night. I'll say that much. You know, it was almost like it's a family member that disappoints you, is how I felt, you know, inside Scotiabank Arena last night. You know, seeing what was happening with the other sports, I really felt that there was an opportunity. And let's face it, let's call it what it is. I'm a white male from a small town in Canada. I grew up loving hockey the way a lot of players that you see play in the league did. And that's how I found myself in this job today. And I can see myself in them, and I recognize there's places maybe where I haven't been a strong enough ally, where I haven't used whatever platform I have as a media member to voice those type of things. And I was seeing in that moment those guys not doing the same. And so, you know, I really commend the players, quite honestly, for what's happened since then. You know, I know the conversation started last night with some players and members of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, spilled over to today. You know, obviously a lot of honest conversations. I do think there were some players that felt maybe playing was a good idea, but you know, through those conversations, we've arrived here tonight, and I think it's the absolute right decision.
You know, I wasn't on the schedule last night, so I was at home watching, and I could see how difficult it was on those of you, including yourself, David, who were working on the broadcast. You know, I mean, there's no question that this is the right thing that has to happen. We're all in this together, no matter what our backgrounds are, and we have to all do this together. And, you know, the one thing I hope that kind of comes for it is I don't know if you can ever plan for anything like happened last night. I don't know if you can ever say, I'm ready for this. My grandmother used to have a line, you plan and God laughs. But, you know, the one thing I look back at last night is I wish someone, whether it was a high official at the NHL, the NHLPA, or even among the two organizations that were playing at 8 Eastern, Tampa and Boston, had been able to say, let's just take 30 minutes and think for a second. Let's just look around, what's going on around us. You know, this whole thing about the players making the choice, I don't think last night the Bruins and the Lightning could have made that choice. Like, they're focused on the game. It's a huge playoff game, and I don't think it was fair to expect them to make that decision. But I wish that someone with a more global view had stood up and said, let's take 30 minutes and look at this, and I hope we never have to do this again, but hopefully sometime in the future we'll plan for what we have to if we have to do this again.
Connect the dots, and that's well said by both of you guys. Chris, start with you. Connect the dots. How did we get exactly here? You touched on it a little bit with the HDA getting involved, players getting involved. How did this whole decision come about?
Well, look, players heard the interview you had, David, you know, with Evander Kane in the pregame show last night. I think they heard what Matt Dumba had to say during an appearance on radio last night in Vancouver. And, you know, they took that to heart. You know, those guys were asking, you're right, they were extending the olive branch and saying, we need allies here. You don't just have to be a black player in this league to answer questions on this issue, to make a stance on this issue. And so, you know, from my understanding, the conversation did start last night. I think by the time you got to today, I mean, obviously, we were going to have 2 scheduled games. you had players on the Vancouver Canucks in particular from what my reporting is told that really didn't feel comfortable playing tonight. And, that's not to say that members of the other three teams that were in there, because I do know there were members of those teams too that weren't quite there yet. But, I think Vancouver had a big role in starting this conversation. And then obviously, ultimately, there's a pretty big conference call with members of the HDA where they could work through some issues and really, start talking to the league and do the planning that's had to take place to make this official.
All right, thanks so much. Elliotte?
Well, I just wanted to say, you talked there and you guys mentioned about allies. I think there were two players today who spoke up and their words were really heard, who were allies, and those were Kevin Shattenkirk and James Van Riemsdyk. And just a couple players mentioned to me that those guys should be credited for speaking up and being allies on a day like today.
And Ron, because there'll be no games today and tomorrow, that means all 8 teams still involved in the Stanley Cup playoffs will be part of this postponement.
Lots more from the three of you, David. Obviously, Matt Dumba and Akeem Aliu of the Diversity Alliance will join us here shortly. But players are meeting right now in Edmonton. So let's eavesdrop at Rogers Place in Edmonton.
Good afternoon. We're joined by members of the Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars, and Vancouver Canucks. Speaking for the Canucks, Captain Bo Horvat. For the Stars, Jason Dickinson. For the Knights, Ryan Reeves. And from the Avalanche, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare and Nazem Kadri. We'll now take questions. Brendan Batchelor, Sportsnet, go ahead.
First of all, this question's for Bo. Just your thoughts on the decision that the players have made today as a group, and just sort of take us inside the conversations you guys have had that have led to this point.
Yeah, I think it was a really important decision, and I think it was the right decision to make. We needed to do something and make a stand, and I think this is the appropriate form of action that we're doing right now. And I couldn't be proud of our group of guys to come up with this solution. And regarding thoughts and the stuff that we went over this morning, we met as a group and went over to Vegas, and we met as as a group there, and thought this was going to be the best form of action to take. And I'm really proud of what we come up with, and we definitely think this is the best thing to do.
Go to Ryan Clark, The Athletic.
This question is for Nazem, Pierre-Edouard, and Ryan. What does this day mean to the three of you? What does this moment mean to the three of you to know that the league is doing something and standing behind you are your peers in a united front?
I think if you look around this room, there's a lot of white athletes in here, and I think that's the statement that's being made right now. It's great that the NBA did this, and the MLB and the WNBA. They have a lot of black players in those leagues, but for all these athletes in here to take a stand and say, you know what, we see the problem too, and we stand behind you. I go to war with these guys, and I hate their guts on the ice, but I couldn't be more proud of these guys. It's, the statement that they've made today is something that's going to last. These 2 days isn't going to fix anything, but the conversation and the statement that's been made is very powerful, especially coming from this league.
I agree. Just to reiterate, I think this is a big enough statement, just all these guys sticking together. I've never, I got so much more respect for every single player in this league by doing something like this. And obviously systemic racism, we can use these next couple days to further educate ourselves and try to, for the betterment of society. So, it's something that needed to be done. And, I think hockey's a team sport, a team game, and every single one of these guys are on the same page and stand with each other.
Same here. It's not an easy subject. It's an awkward subject for a lot of people, and the fact that we're all here together right now, it's going to bring a lot of awareness, and it's going to be a lot of questions asked, and it's going to be able to help everybody educate themselves, educate the people to ask the question, and the fact that everybody is right here with us, standing up together, is huge. It's a great unity.
Take the next one, Josh Clipperton, Canadian Press.
Hey guys, for Naz, Pierre-Edouard, and Jason, just with the benefit of hindsight, did it feel right to play last night? Like, were you reservations when you were on the ice playing that game?
Yeah, it did, but in the same time, it happened really fast. I don't want to, give the blame to anybody, but by the time we got to the rink, games were on, and the news came up that the NBA postponed, so it didn't feel right, but I feel that after reflecting on it and us being here together, it's the best response we could have.
Greg Wyshynski, ESPN.
Thanks a lot. Hey, Ryan, Kevin Shattenkirk over on the Eastern side was talking about the influence that you had for a lot of these guys. What was your message about why it was important not to play?
I think it was just what I said. I think the message coming from a predominantly white league has a lot bigger impact. Not bigger impact, but it has a very strong impact when it's coming from players like this. Most of these guys have never lived through some of the stuff that black athletes have. They don't go through those day-to-day things that they feel that racism, or they've seen the racism, or their family's gone through it. But for them to say, look, we see what's going on in society, and we disagree with it, and something has to change right now. That was my message, and I think I said that standing together here is it's more powerful than anything you can do. We're in a bubble. There's nothing you can do outside the bubble right now, and we can't change anything because we're stuck in here. But together in here right now, that's what we can do.
Patrick Johnston, Post Media.
Bo, can you maybe just walk us through the thinking this morning? What were you guys thinking about? Why today? Why not yesterday? Why not Tuesday? What changed?
No, I think just, again, we talked about it in the room this morning, and, we really, obviously realizing the impact it's having on the world and around the sports communities, and obviously, seeing what was going on with basketball and the MLB and everything that, we talked about as a group, and then wanted to go over and talk to Ryan in Vegas, and we just all thought it was the best course of action, and everything that Brian's has been saying, that we need to come together, and obviously this kind of stuff can't stand, and that we need to educate ourselves and realize what's going on in the world, and I think he's hit the nail right on the head that there needs to be change, and us being all together here, as one, definitely shows strength in the hockey community as well as in the world.
Take the next one, Saad Youssef, The Athletic.
Hey, Nazem, I'm just curious, with the hoodie that you have on, is there a particular importance with that for you? Obviously, Muhammad Ali stood for and things like that. Does that mean anything special to you?
Obviously, he's an icon, someone I looked up to. Probably my favorite athlete. I think, he was definitely a role model. And as leaders up here with the NHL, I think we have a unique opportunity to try to create sustainable change. And, that's what this is all about. It's not just one or two guys. It's, every single player being on the same page and sticking together. And, morally and ethically, this is the right thing to do.
Take the next one, Sean Shapiro, The Athletic.
Hey, Jason, you were kind of cut off earlier, I think, when the question was targeted to you as well. How do you look at kind of from playing last night and kind of thinking about that decision and kind of what the discussions were like today for you guys?
Yeah, I think it was just a really quick turnaround for the events, and the timing for us was a difficult stance to take, and you know what, I don't think us not reacting quick enough was necessarily a bad thing. We're doing our part now, and we're trying to do what we can here today and tomorrow, and you know what, we could have not played yesterday, but it was such a quick turnaround that I think it was hard for us to start that conversation and you know, get it going, and we were able to dive into it a little bit better today, and really open up as a group. And obviously Vancouver and Vegas, they were able to open up together, and then things stemmed from there.
David Shane, Las Vegas Review-Journal. Justin Emerson, Las Vegas Sun.
Hi, Ryan and Jason. Since you guys and Robin and Tyler knelt for the anthem a couple of weeks ago, there hasn't been a whole lot of, I guess, maybe activism on the ice since then. Have you guys been wanting to do more since then?
I think when we took a knee that one day, it was a day to start the conversation. For me, I also have a lot of respect for military, and so I wanted to start the conversation of what's going on in the States right now, but I also want to stand and respect the people that have fought and died for this country. So I don't think I was planning on doing anything else on the ice. I don't know if I am after this, to be honest, but I think this is a much more powerful message today than anything that one or two, three guys can do on the ice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nothing more needs to be said. We were able to start a big conversation amongst our team, stemming from that moment. So, that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to get the conversation going, and not only amongst ourselves, but amongst the country and the world.
Go to Arif Dean, Mile High Sports.
Hey, Nazem, I wanted to ask you, when you see the news in the NBA that LeBron James, the biggest name in the league, he played a large role in not only postponing yesterday's games, but the Lakers, his team, who has a chance to win it all, they actually voted against even playing the rest of the playoffs today or yesterday. How powerful of a message does that send to you, and how powerful do you think it is for you and ultimately for the rest of these guys to stand here in solidarity, even though you guys are opponents on the ice first and you're all battling for the same prize?
It means a lot. I mean, more than you could imagine. I think just having a player of that status, being able to, sacrifice potentially another championship, for something bigger than that. Some things are bigger than sports, and, there comes a time where, you got to start acting on your word. I mean, you can say and put up signs and have all that stuff, which is great, but, at the end of the day, it's, what are we really doing to make a difference? And, it's that time for action.
Ian McIntyre, Sportsnet.
Hi, either for Pierre-Edouard or Ryan. It wasn't the NBA that shut down last night's games, it was the players. And it's not NHL that's shutting down tonight's and tomorrow's games, but it's the players. Do you see this as a moment of empowerment? And do you think players will be more proactive in the future in taking a stand rather than necessarily waiting for the league to tell them what should be done?
Yeah, I think the best thing that happened, last night I struggled with, what I wanted to do, whether it was, am I really going to walk out on my team and be the only guy, or is there going to be a couple guys? But I woke up to, a text from Kevin Shattenkirk, and he had a bunch of guys out east there, and they wanted to talk, and then I got a text saying Vancouver wanted to talk, and that I think was more powerful. That the conversation started with white players on other teams wanting to talk, and I think that's the most powerful thing that happened today. And now you see us all coming together, all opponents here. I hope after this, I don't expect every one of these guys to go out and be advocates for this movement, but I'm sure a lot of us are, and that's the biggest thing. You can't just talk about it in the bubble and then go home and live your life. You gotta start being part of it, and I expect lots of us to.
Matt Larkin, the Hockey News.
Hey guys, this one's for Jason. In a couple days, the dust will settle. You guys will probably be back on the ice. So what do you do to make sure the message stays strong, just going forward, and especially from the perspective of sort of white allyship?
Sorry, can you finish it or repeat the end of that?
Yeah, I just said from the white perspective, in just terms of showing your allyship going forward, and just sort of making sure this isn't a thing that comes and goes.
Yeah, I mean, like Reeve said, it's tough to do a whole lot while we're in this bubble. We can keep using our words and keep trying to get it out into the media, but it's going to come down to our action once we're out of here. We got to start doing more. You know, I know Dallas, our organization, has done some good work in St. Philip's in particular, and you know, we need to grow off of that stuff. We need to keep doing more. We need to keep finding more ways that we can give back into these communities and these situations to really right the wrongs that have been going on and try to balance out what we've been witnessing.
Take a couple more for the guys. Himal Javeri, USA Today.
So just to follow up on that question about white allyship, how are you guys planning to make changes that, you know, it's been a couple of months since the summer where everybody was making social media posts. The teams have had a chance to do it. Is this something that's going to come in waves, or are there clear plans to partner with Black players and to take the lead with them?
Well, I think the Hockey Diversity Association is a great start. You know, right there, they're getting the ball rolling to bring the white allyship in and get us on board and help them out. And you know, I can't say that we've got a definitive plan today. You know, we're working on things, and this is why we need a couple days to talk things out and get organized and really hash out a plan, because you know, we can talk all we want, but until we do something, it's all just words.
Yeah, those 2 days are, we know that they're not maybe going to change everything right now, but the main point is that we're all here and we are aware of what's going on, and it has to stop. And this is a message that we're sending to our organization, the NHL, that we want to work together to take a better step, a different step, and making sure that this never happen again. And it's the HDA has a plan, and it's up to us after the bubble and every players, the organization, to make sure that we work together with our communities to make sure it's just get better and better. The reason why we're here right now is because there's nobody in this room happy about what is happening, and this is the key. We could change the 5 guys in front of the mic, and it would be the same answers, and that's the key.
Ben Goetz, Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Hi, this question's for Nazem. I mean, we just heard that the HDA has a plan. Can you kind of tell us what you would like to do for the rest of the bubble and beyond, and what you would like to see from the NHL in the bubble and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, just being a member of the HDA, I think we have certain initiatives and policies that you know, we would like the NHL to act on. You know, we feel that it's very reasonable, and you know, I unfortunately I can't dive too much into specifics, but there is a plan, and moving forward, you know, we want the NHL to understand that, you know, this is a partnership, a collaborative effort to you know, create sustainable change. And you know, moving forward, you know, it's going to have to be the whole league. It's going to have to be collectively, not just 1 or 2 guys. Strength in number is key, and you know, in order to make serious change, that's what's going to need it to be happen.
Thank you, guys. That concludes the player portion of the media availability. We'll be joined shortly by the head coaches.
Just stopping to assess society. What an incredible image that is in Edmonton. So thanks to the players for providing us with that. Just seeing the Cassius Clay. When Muhammad Ali declined to go to Vietnam, he was, of course, charged with being a draft dodger. There was a big summit in Cleveland in 1967. Bill Russell was part of that. Jim Brown was the one who organized it. There were a dozen African-American athletes. It was very powerful. That was 67. The following year, we had the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and then the Mexico Olympics. And there was a lot of talk about boycotting those games. And in fact, they elected to go, and that's where John Carlos and Tommy Smith made their legendary stance. So we're going to discuss a lot of that. Peter Mansbridge a little bit later on in the broadcast, Harnarayan Singh. Right now, you heard the HDA referenced by Nazem. Here are Matt Dumba and Akeem Alou. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Matt, I'll start with you. Congrats on opening night. Congrats on the feature you gave us during the playoffs. Congrats on the round you played against those Vancouver Canucks. Just your feelings on listening to what we just did.
For me, personally, I'm just so proud. Guys that, we battle against on a night-to-night basis, former teammates, guys you can call brothers, we're standing up and fighting for, what we believe in and are just buying into it, and to see the strength of everyone doing it together today, it just, it makes me so proud to be, an NHL player and see that this is player-driven action, that, these guys took the time to, really sit down and think and, articulate their thoughts and learn and listen. So, props goes out to all those guys, and, I want nothing taken away from them and the stand that they're making.
Akeem, I understand that some of the members of the HDA were involved with the players in what's happened over the 24 hours. Can you fill me in on that?
So they reached out to a couple of players from the Flyers, reached out to Chris Stewart, yesterday, Lot and GR, asking some guys. And then earlier this morning, I know Mike Cobra reached out to that.
Matt, one thing, and Akeem, you can both touch on this, but we're hearing a lot about why not last night, and you know what it was like for the players, readiness for the game, etc. I feel like we're at a time in society where you have to make that decision spur of the moment. Were we losing the two? It looks like we are. We still have you, Matt. Good. Okay. So there's a philosophical hypothetical where two accountants are hired, and they find out within minutes of getting the job that they can embezzle from the company and no one will know. And immediately one decides he's not going to do it, and the other decides to think about it and spends 2 weeks mulling over the benefits of the money, the fact he'll never get caught, the company won't notice, and then after 2 weeks decides, no, it's the wrong thing to do. And the question is, who's the better person? And the ancient Greeks would have said the first person for saying no immediately. And then by the time we got to about 1980-85, philosophy had it that the second one actually weighed things and they should be congratulated. And now we're back a little bit with social media to you better know what you're doing right now, like the ancient Greeks. Don't you feel like it's been a really challenging time to communicate with one another, to do what you're doing, this advocacy, which is so important, and not put somebody under the pressure to think so fast? How do you feel about that?
Me personally, I understand what playoffs can do and how you can put away, all social media. You have your game day nap, and you're just dialed in to the playoff game. And I talked to a bunch of guys today, and their responses were genuine, and they did say, like, if we would have known everything and had it in front of us, then we probably would have acted quicker. So there's a sense of, I think, especially with our league and how white dominated it is, I think this is still a huge step, and especially the players taking it upon themselves to learn and reach out and guide advice and learn. There's a sense of grace that comes with that when there is that genuine act of caring and wanting to make a difference, and that's what I feel from these guys in all my talks today. So I'm just really proud of them, and I hope people can see that as well.
We're watching opening night that you did, which was beyond incredible. What would you like to see, Matt, next? Now we got to take this protest, and it's a 2-day protest, it looks like, from the major leagues, and turn it to policy. What's your hope for more action within anthems, demonstrations? What would you like to see? Matt, you hear Ron now? I feel bad speaking over the anthem here, but
I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, I'll just ask again. What would you like to see next? I think the 2 days. I think what we just saw, what you've done, is so important that it's not going to get lost with the return to play, and the message can be delivered with play continuing, because there's some feeling that it'll be forgotten if we get back to playing hockey. What do you think about that? Will it be forgotten if we get back to hockey Saturday?
I actually, I think people are going to be quick to jump to that assumption, but I think even tomorrow we have meetings, with guys, kind of explaining everything and what's going on right now. So, guys are taking it, kind of the Kelly Hrudey approach and having those conversations that you need to have with the people that you care about, your loved ones, the guys on your team. So I think that's what these next 2 days are for. And as far as all the talking, we've talked a lot. We've made our statements and all of this, and I know that because of the constant media requests and everything that guys are going to get. But after all the talking is done, it comes down to action, and that's what I want to see happen. So if we can get that ball rolling and have everyone on the same page, there's just going to be so much strength in numbers, and we're going to do big things with our players and our game.
I felt, Akeem, like what could the HDA have in terms of leverage with big corporate, National Hockey League, big corporate, anybody? Suddenly it feels like maybe you do have enormous leverage. Do you feel like this last 24 hours has been a real tipping point for the work that you're setting out to do?
I mean, I feel like for the first time in a long time, first time ever, players of color have leverage and we have power in our game. And I think it's important to use that in a positive manner to bring about real change, and starting at the grassroots level and giving an opportunity to the ownership and to the higher ups of the NHL to do the right thing, but also to work cohesively with us to bring about some of the changes that need to happen, because we're all players of color in our group, and we've dealt with these issues firsthand. So there's no one better to speak on these issues than us, and it's we need to use our platform and the reach that we have to reach as many people as possible.
Well, one last thing, Akeem, I'll let you go first on this, and then Matt, you can follow with that or anything you want, really. But just dealing with the National Hockey League office, dealing with the other sports. I think that's one of the things, too, that last night I tried to imagine, like, did baseball, and we have Hazel Mae and Paul Jones here representing the Raptors and the Blue Jays and the two leagues. Did everybody know what was really going down, and how important is it for everybody to sort of consolidate the effort here, to make a plan together? Akeem first.
I mean, I think it's super important. We were super disappointed as a group to hear Alain Vigneault, what he said about not knowing what's going on in the outside world. Like, it's 2020. I mean, people have cell phones and there's internet. I don't understand how you don't know what's going on. So that was really disappointing to hear, and that's kind of been the mentality a little bit in the National Hockey League. But we feel like it's important to educate and talk through these things and come together. I think at the end of the day, we're going to need the white community support more than ours to bring about real change and understanding and what's going on. And I think, like I said, we need to come together as one and have these ongoing conversations and not just let it be a one-off.
Okay, I was going to let you go, Matt, but let me, and Akeem, you by all means, please jump in. But, when the kids see their parents fighting in front of the kids, right? Now that we're together, now that you're an HDA, it's got to be hard, right? For you and for the players and everybody. So that's an interesting dynamic for me, Matt, is how to achieve that, decision-making with all these different owners and leagues. Just give me a thought about that, and then back to that question about working with others.
That's a tough question. How you navigate through all that. Yeah, I think if you can put the money aside and just stare at the moral compass, and I think that will be a good lead through all of this. Just standing up and doing the right thing. I think we're all in a position, from us players to owners, coaches, GMs. We're in a position where we can make such an impact on our game and really change it for the first time ever, if we all do unite. And I think this is just one of the first steps towards that. And the dream of eradicating racism from our game, and hopefully showing that the NHL and the players will stand up for social injustices that they see within our society as well.
Really, truly appreciate your time here this evening. Thank you, Akeem, as always. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks very much.
Matt Dumba Akimalu of the Hockey Diversity Alliance. Hashtag in conversation.
Thanks,
Please tell us what you're thinking and feeling tonight. Hazel Mae, Paul Jones, Elliotte Freidman, and the three leagues when we continue. Back on Hockey Central tonight, no NHL games as the players band together in all of the sports. Hashtag the conversation. Elliotte Freidman's over in another side. You've already heard from Elliotte on the show. Really pleased to have Hazel Mae with me in studio here. We've done a lot of work at Sportsnet Central and whatnot, but first time on Hockey Night in Canada, Hazel. So thank you so much for joining us, representing the Jays in Major League Baseball. And there's Paul Jones, who of course is a star of the Fan 590 radio. His show, Smith and Jones, is just brilliant. You were great today and with the Raptors broadcasts and the NBA. Hazel, we were just sitting watching the men do their thing, and you were saying this reminds me a lot of a good story about allyship.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking in the green room about what does real change look like in Major League Baseball, and I thought to myself, you know, Josh Hader is a reliever for the Milwaukee Brewers, and back in 2018 during the All-Star game, he had old tweets come up. They were racist, they were homophobic, and there were misogynist tweets that came up. And he explained that, you know, this was him at 17, 18 years old. And now that he's in his mid-20s, he has been at the forefront of being an ally for the Milwaukee Brewers. And a lot of people, he was taking heat on social media saying, you know, this is the guy that, you know, is spearheading this, you know, allyship for the African Americans on his team. And I just thought to myself, isn't this the change that everybody is looking for? We're looking for people to evolve. We're looking for people to change their views. And Josh Hader has done just that. And a lot of people on social media have been, you know, all over him because, you know, this shouldn't be the guy that should be out there, you know, fighting for the African American community. But the allyship, what the African American community is looking for are for the whites, the privileged ones, to really stand up for them. And Josh Hader, to me, is the guy that people want to be. They want those that have different views and that look to the African American community as not equals. We want them to change. And I think Josh Hader now being at the forefront for the Milwaukee Brewers and fighting for equality, I think that is what everybody is hoping that will happen.
Paul.
I mean, Hazel's right. I mean, I've been listening to hockey here for half an hour and, you know, better late than never. I know some people were critical of last night. Ron, as you said, the people didn't react, the guys didn't react right away, but as a predominantly white league who, let's face it, had a reputation of lagging behind and some bad things, doesn't matter. They're willing to change. And if those guys are willing to come forward, then that's what you need. And look, the NBA is 78% African American. Those guys live it every day. They go through all of the stuff that we talk about, with stopped by the police and having issues in stores and all of those things. The police brutality is the big one. And they just want people to look at them as equal. They want to be recognized as just a regular person. You know, Doc Rivers said, why can't I be just a coach? Why am I a black coach? And the players, the same thing. They are in that bubble down there, and I'm sure some of them feel trapped. And yesterday, by stopping the games, that was their way of saying some of the other stuff is faded. The T-shirts, the money that we're donating, the Black Lives Matter stuff, it's fading. They threw another rock through the window yesterday to say, hey, we need your attention. Nothing's being done. Let's get this thing moving in the right direction. So for all of those players that decided not to play, they were taking a stand. They've decided now, we're going to go back and play. Because after a game when Fred VanVleet scores 30 points and he's asked about the game and says, well, I want to talk about the game, but I also want to know why the police haven't been arrested that shot Breonna Taylor. I want to know what we're going to do about Ahmaud Arbery. I want to know what's going on. Now you have a platform. So I understand they made their protest yesterday, and for all the other leagues to join in, great. Even though the NHL was late, glad that they're in. But you still need to use your platform to push change. And all they've done, Ron, Hazel, CJ, David, Elliotte, is got somebody's attention again. But we haven't made any real change yet. So let's start to push this forward to start making changes.
Elliotte.
Well, Paul, you just talked about pushing it forward. It was interesting in the media conference we just watched, they talked about meetings tomorrow. And one of the players I talked to today said in their conversations they talked about meaningful change. And that's a word the NBA players have been talking about a lot in the last 24 to 48 hours. So it says to me that some of the same language the NBA players have talked about, the NHL players are starting to talk about. And I don't think that's insignificant. There were two teams that didn't play yesterday, Vancouver and Vegas. And as the details start to leak out as to how this all started in hockey, I don't think it's a big surprise now that we're learning that the Golden Knights and the Canucks were two of the teams that really started with this because they didn't have to play. And listening to Ryan Reeves there talking about how uncertain he was, and he woke up to text messages from the Vancouver Canucks and his old teammate in St. Louis, Kevin Shattenkirk, that got this going. I mean, let's go back 4 nights. This is, game 1 of that Western Conference series between Vancouver and Vegas, and we were all talking about Reeves versus Roussel and how he drove the Canucks crazy and everything that was going on in that game. And now, less than a week later, it's the Vancouver Canucks that reach out to him and say, hey, we realize we've got a bigger part of this. And just looking at social and just seeing a lot of the reaction today, I don't think that's insignificant. I think a lot of people are taking a look at this and saying that's a pretty impressive and emotional development.
Elliotte, you were like me watching last night, and every time I watch, I am just aghast or agog at how incredible these performances are in all of the sports, considering the COVID pandemic, considering the family issues, considering the financial fears, and considering this social injustice crisis. So, there's that. Paul, you spoke today. That was your number one question to each guest. What is change? What is change going to be? What does it look like?
Change looks like equality, Ron. It does. It's all of the things that everybody else seems to have that Black people think that they don't. It's opportunity. It's changes in the hiring practices. It's changes in attitudes. It's breaking down stereotypes. It's all of those things that people fight on a daily basis. And I said it on the radio this afternoon. I'm sure there are people out there that were listening, rolling their eyes saying, oh, geez, here goes Jones again. Well, let me tell you something. If you're tired of it, I've been living it. And it's tiring. It's difficult. David Amber's been living it. It's difficult. It's hard. And change is equality. It is. It's not being bothered. It's not being second guessed. It's not being policed or looked at differently in any ways. Yes, you have your culture and your heritage and those things that are yours. But when you're fitting into the greater society, accept me as that person that I am trying to fit in, and don't treat me differently. Don't discriminate against me.
If you have to change your opinion, Paul, to make it acceptable to me, to get along with me, you might as well be alone. Yeah. And I think that's it was great to listen to you on that. So even Hazel, you were saying the context in which all of this is happening is amazing to you.
Is striking, because when you think about on August 16th, just over 10 days ago, Major League Baseball was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. And why did they even have the Negro Leagues? It's because they weren't allowed to play with the white players in Major League Baseball. And tomorrow on August 28th, Major League Baseball is, going to celebrate Jackie Robinson Day. For baseball fans, they know that April 15th is the date that we normally celebrate Jackie Robinson Day, but because of the pandemic, it's tomorrow. And the fact that this is all happening, sandwiched between two very important dates across Major League Baseball, is striking to me. And maybe, Ron, this is what it takes for people to have the light shine even brighter on social injustice. The fact that it's Jackie Robinson Day tomorrow, I know that Major League Baseball is already thinking of ways to make tomorrow's celebration that much more meaningful because of what's happening around us. I just find the fact that it's happened between those two very big dates was very striking to me.
Elliotte, Olympics, so many things you've covered. Where does this place? What do you think about when you watch Kenny Smith walk off the set on TNT and you have Shaquille O'Neal, who's got a policing father and he's a sheriff, and Charles Barkley's looking at him thinking, well, I got to respect this guy who's conflicted, and I got to respect Kenny who's conflicted. And, so where do you sit on that, covering a story such as this?
You know, it's a great question, Ron. And a couple months ago, I was having a conversation with a black NHL player, and he goes, "You know what I think your problem is, Elliotte?" And I said, "You know, there's a long list, but what is it?" And he said to me, "I wonder if you're too reserved for this. Like, you're a guy who is a thinker. You like to go about things a certain way, and we need people who are willing to push the line." And, you know, I think about that conversation a lot, because I think one of the reasons I'm fortunate enough to be here in this job is because I do approach my job that way. But, you know, I have thought a lot about, in the last few months, how do I push myself a little bit? How do I make myself a little bit uncomfortable? I think I do a lot of things, particularly behind the scenes, that help people out. I like doing things privately as opposed to publicly. But Ron, like, I do think from time to time about what that player said to me, and do I have to push myself out there a bit more, or do something I find a bit more uncomfortable than normal to do the things that need to be done? So that's the thing I think about the most.
Well, you know, Elliotte and Paul, you joined us on this because you're a teacher as well as a great broadcaster. Etiquette was created in order to have civility in these kinds of conversations. Like, we're all about the conversation, the hashtag conversation, but where do we find the civility? And in fact, in a revolution, you can't. You know, there has to be bloodshed. So,
Ron, I just want to jump in here, and it brings to mind the two words we talk about, and you talk about teaching. Taught the kids in grade 8 in a great book by George Orwell, Animal Farm, about the two things that go together, conflict and change. You never have one without the other. They are interlaced, and they are always going to be there. And, you know, to Elliotte's point, as a black person in society, you're taught to stand down. You're conflicted at times within yourself, because if you speak up, maybe your job's on the line, maybe your position's on the line. So you try to fit in and you back up. So something like this now has finally opened the door for people to start saying stuff and start pointing things out and start having conversations, and starting people like yourself, Ron, and Elliotte, and CJ, and other of my colleagues to think, wait a minute, I need to think about this. How does that work? Why isn't that the same for him as it is for me? And again, you grow up living that, but when you get out into the mainstream, you have to kind of stand down at times and temper it. And we're coming to a generation, especially of younger black people, that are allowed to speak up, and it's okay to speak up. People were on Michael Jordan because he said Republicans buy sneakers too. But LeBron James has been the opposite. Well, people don't know that behind the scenes, Michael Jordan did indeed contribute to the Democratic Party and some of the things that were going on. But they look at that one statement, and there he is kind of standing back, trying to fit in, and people were upset at him. And it's okay now. And even at my advanced age, I feel it's okay now to start speaking up, because my late father used to say, you can suffer in silence or speak up, and it's time to speak up.
Oh, self-silence has been such a part of minorities, the marginalized, right, Hazel?
And if I may just say, we talk about change, and Jonesy, you're absolutely right. I think change also within ourselves and within our households. I think we all know that hate is taught. So as we're all, you know, yes, let's change our attitudes, let's do this, let's do that. How about we start at home? How about I start with my 7-year-old son? How about people, you know, start within the people they live with? And maybe that's where change starts. And then we can just kind of go from there. It's great to think about, you know, let's do this and let's do that and let's put banners up and but how about we start at home? And I think once we can, you know, teach our children that someone that does not look the same as they do does not mean they're lesser of a human being, I think things can progress to a better future.
I always love the notion that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there is that. Last thing on that then, Jonesy, because that's what what was so nice about what Kelly was, you could see, near driven to tears last night, thinking about wanting to talk with his family. It is about the kids. What we saw there today is for the kids, right?
I've got 3 biracial kids, and they grew up learning about what Dad went through and seeing how it is on Mom's side, and that's the way it is. And I think what's poignant now is the diversity of the people protesting. The NHL, say what you want. If they're in the fight, that's what we need. It's not a black person problem. It's an everybody problem. And it's about equality and how you treat other people. And black people just feel like they haven't been treated fairly, haven't been treated properly. So it's time now to get this out there. And look, to say that that racism is only in the U.S., it's not true. It's everywhere. The U.S., they might have perfected it, but it's everywhere. And it goes on everywhere, and their practice is everywhere. And again, we're having these conversations now, Ron, Hazel, Elliotte, David, CJ, but we need to go to another level with changing policies, changing procedures, and you start by changing attitudes, and that's where it trickles down.
Yeah, fantastic. Paul Jones and Hazel Mae, really appreciate you. Well, last thing, Hazel, one thing you did say that I think is touching, because I mentioned the games when I watched them, how impressed I am with the professionalism of the athletes and all who made it happen. Couldn't be a crazier time for these folks to be entertaining this.
Yeah, for the Blue Jays, and you and I talked again off camera, let's remember the core of the Blue Jays are 21, 22, 23. These athletes first were thrown into uncertainty. They didn't have a place. While in the midst of preparing for a season, they didn't know where their home stadium was going to be. Then there's the pandemic they got to worry about. Then there's, those who are trying to return from injury. Because they're getting paid per game, there's that financial stress. There's a lot going on. And to throw this on top, I think, a lot of fans will look to the players, and whether they want to be mentors or people to be looked up to or not, they are essentially. And, I feel for them. I feel like there's probably a feeling of, that they're overwhelmed, that there's a lot of pressure to do the right thing, to lead. But, you have to kind of in the back of your mind remember that they're 21, 22. I mean, they can't even rent a car, for goodness sakes, in Canada. So, I feel for them. They're dealing with a lot. And that's like, Paul, your point about the BIPOC community having carried the burden of all of this for so long. So thank you to you and your wife, Susan, for coming in tonight. It was just a treat to have you on the broadcast. Hazel Mae, thank you. Thank you. Elliotte, you're not going anywhere. You're here for the night. So we'll continue our coverage. Peter Mansbridge will join us next. Hashtag the conversation on Hockey Central. Back on Hockey Central, hashtag the conversation. David Amber, Chris Johnston, Elliotte Freidman are monitoring the social media conversation, so we'll deal with that a little bit later on. Also, we should have some reports coming in from coaches around the National Hockey League as well, but there you see Peter Mansbridge. Peter, thank you for joining me. Peter is the only guest for 38 shows. We did a show called In Conversation that was an online show during the beginning of the pandemic, and only one guest made it twice, and you're looking at him. That's how much I value, Peter, you as a guest. So thank you, and I'll open the floor.
It's great to be here with you, Ron. And let me start off by saying the conversation tonight has been really good, very strong, very powerful. We all kind of talk about we're in a very special moment, and we are, but I don't think we should underestimate just how large a moment it is. Here you've got every professional sports league on the continent that have joined together, in effect, and shut down by and because of the players. They've made the decision. I think, some of us were very disappointed last night that the hockey players took so long to make their decision, but they made it. And that was yesterday. We're into it now. You cannot understate the significance of the moment. This is a powerful thing that these players have done. They've become more powerful than politicians, business leaders, the arts community, you name it. They hold the stage right now. So the question is, what do they do with it? You heard a number of the hockey players mention in that news conference that, 2 days, we're not going to solve anything in 2 days. That's true, they're not. But they have established a place within the debate for themselves, and it's what they do with it. Because, look at it. You talked about the program that you did during and continuing during the pandemic right now. We started off the pandemic and we talked about it being, this is the great equalizer. Everybody's going to be affected by this the same way. Well, that wasn't true. And it's been proven not to have been true. In many ways, what we thought was the great equalizer turned out to be the great divider. And it divided communities, it divided people, it divided social classes, it divided black and white and color and indigenous. It made divisions. So we've got a number of things going here. And the players now suddenly find themselves in the position where they can really make a difference. One of them said in that news conference, I'm not sure which one it was, I think it was Naz Kadri, but said, part of what has to happen now is we have to go into communities. Not people have to go into communities, but we have to go into communities. They have, you know, the presence, the stage presence to be able to do that and make a difference. To go into communities, some of our top athletes in all the sports, and talk to people, talk to kids, especially. You know, I spent some time today talking to Perdita Felicien, who is so good on this. But she sort of went through, you know, what can you do? What are the things that can happen? And one of the things is talking to kids, is talking to kids about the kind of books they read. What do those books show? Who are they talking about? What other kids do they see in the book? Do they only see kids look like themselves? Or do they see the broad community that we all live in? And why that's important. And players who have the presence and who have the excitement of kids around them can make a difference in that conversation. I mean, what happens now is critical, or we'll be looking back, just like you talked about 68 and the movement at the Olympics of some of the black athletes from the States after the assassination of Martin Luther King and the riots in the cities and all of that. Well, what happened? Here we are, like 50 odd years later, and we're still having those conversations, because that was a moment. That was an incredible moment. You remember it, I remember it. But what happened? Nothing much happened. What's going to happen here? It has to happen now. It has to happen now. And for it to happen, we've all got to be involved. And the athletes are at the front of this line right now. They hold the cards. They hold the direction. Look what they've accomplished in the last 24 hours.
I agree.
What they hopefully will accomplish in the next 48 hours.
I couldn't agree more, Peter. I thought that the Hockey Diversity Alliance was a noble idea, but I thought it had no leverage going into dealings with, say, the National Hockey League. And then suddenly they put out the challenge, and I know the players probably did this as well for themselves, but it did feel like a moment of empowerment for the HDA. So, I mean, you're watching two things happening here. You're doing a podcast yourself called The Bridge. So you look at how this pandemic has affected the United States. Who's dying? Are minorities, dying? Who is being disadvantaged? Maybe shed some light on what you've learned through the pandemic about life in North America, let's call it, because Canada's part of it.
Yeah, look, in the States, it's been horrific in terms of the numbers. We've seen it. I mean, it's credit to the federal government and the provincial governments in Canada, who have there been problems? Absolutely. Have there been horror stories? Absolutely. But we're doing much better than our friends to the south. And what we've evidenced through the situation in the States is the inequities of the pandemic. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't a great equalizer, not at all. The majority of people who have suffered the most from this have been in Black communities across the United States, and in parts of Canada as well. So, that hasn't turned the way that a lot of people thought it was going to in trying to make communities more united, because they were all suffering the same. It hasn't happened that way. So that's played a role in what we're witnessing right now. The frustration at various levels in the Black communities of cities across the United States. And when you see it play out as it has in the past couple of days in Wisconsin, and what's happened as a result of it, and some of the things that have been said by the leaders of the US government, and the president included, have not helped the situation at all. He speaks tonight. Will he actually utter Jason Blake's name tonight? He hasn't all week. That was the
of course,
fellow
Peter,
who was shot
that's
7 times back in Kenosha. There's expectation tonight he will finally address that situation. He's addressed it from the other side. We got to stop the riots in the streets, blah, blah, blah. It's all code. So it's, what was the great equalizer has been the great divider. And, that's all part of this story. It's, it's not a simple story. It's a very, confusing story at some levels, but it's a very complicated story at other levels. But, I so admire what I've seen in these last, 24 hours. And in some ways, it's, it may well have started with the Vancouver Canucks, but they may have been prompted as a result of watching Kelly Hrudey yesterday. Kelly kind of started in many ways the conversation within our community, in other words, the broadcast community, about what was happening in terms of hockey. But the hockey players, they're there now. So let's move on. Let's see what can happen as a result of their decisions, the basketball players' decisions, the soccer players' decisions, both men's and women's basketball, some of the baseball teams. I mean, it is quite the moment. And the power that these people have right now, if they leave it on those 4 or 5 mics at the news conference, then it was a waste of time. If they actually do something with it, it could make a real difference.
Okay, hold on. Brian, do we have Kelly's clip? Yeah, so we're going to play Kelly's comment from last night. This is his first answer to what are you thinking about what's happening. And this is what Kelly Hrudey had to say.
I don't think we should be here. I think the NHL should postpone the games. I really feel that we should be more supportive of Black Lives Matter. I know for myself, instead of watching hockey, I'd prefer to be having this conversation with my family. I've said many months ago when I made my video about Black Lives Matter, it means something to me. And we've had many conversations with our family about this issue. And I think we should continue on. And today would be a great day to do that. And I think that the NHL is missing out. This would be an important night for many families to have the discussion again. Like I said, we've lost count how many times we've had the discussion about Black Lives Matter. So I'm disappointed that we're talking about hockey tonight.
It was incredible, wasn't it, Peter? Now, but let me ask you this. You're pretty savvy on social media. You're pretty quick. And I don't want to call it reactionary because you're not, because you've spent your life devoted to these things. But boy, the world is expecting you to answer to these things in a hurry. And I wonder about reflection. I wonder, like in your day and mine, Dostoevsky and Dickens with A Tale of Two Cities, and maybe Berger's Daughter on apartheid in South Africa, maybe Animal Farm, George Orwell. These were the ways we read a book and learned about ethics. Now, you've got like an hour to figure out whether you're on board. So you're a communicator, you're a news anchor, you're trying to speak in the language of the revolution. How?
Well, there are times when I heard you make that, comparison to the 2 philosophers on, taking time to think things through or moving right away on a decision. I think we're at the moment now where you've got to move right away. I mean, we know what the issue is here. It's pretty simple. When a guy gets shot in the back 7 times, with his kids there, he hasn't done anything in that moment. It's pretty simple what's happened there, as have so many of these cases been. So we know the issue. What we don't know is how to resolve it, how to get out of it, how to teach ourselves in a fashion that will eliminate this in the generations to come. Who was it? Chris Webber yesterday in that remarkable interview he did on one of, I think it was ESPN, the former great basketball player. He talked about this issue as well, about how nothing's going to change immediately. It will only change with people who are committed to see change happen, and who are committed to teach each other why change is needed. And that starts with all of us in the way we act, obviously, the way we challenge ourselves to understand our own biases, the way we talk to our kids, the way we ensure that our kids are growing up in the kind of society that, in fact, they see on the street, but they don't see in the books they read or the television shows they see or the movies they go to. So we have to make changes there. But as I said, this is a moment. We lose this moment. You know, I might not be around by the time real change occurs, but you know, the next generation will be, and the next generation after that will be. And I sure as heck hope that the lessons we're trying to teach each other in this day are ones that we take forward. I mean, when you look at that, and I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, I think it was Elliotte. You look at that group of players, mostly white, that's hockey, but standing behind those players of color and a couple of the other leaders of other teams. And you realize, and they realize that, you know what, this is the first time we've really had this conversation. Mm-hmm. And we got to do something with it. I mean, the hockey players kind of started the summer with, you know, we're gonna learn, we're gonna read, we're gonna watch. Well, really? Did they? I don't know. But let's leave that aside. Now they're committed. They stood in front of us and they said, this is going to change. We're going to be a part of the change that's got to happen. Well, more power to them. But the rest of us who are watching, we got to change too.
When Peter was my guest on the last episode of In Conversation, Tanya Talega, the great Indigenous advocate and journalist, she's a journalist who happens to, because of her journalism, be construed as an advocate. You let her teach us, and I admired it greatly, Peter. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you, Ron. Great conversation you guys are having. Keep it going.
Thank you. Hashtag the conversation is right. James Van Riemsdyk and Anders Lee of the Philadelphia Flyer New York Islander series have just spoken.
Hey, Anders, I was wondering, can you sort of take me, you know, we spoke yesterday after the game, and obviously you were just coming off the ice and it was kind of hitting you, you know, as you did that. Can you sort of take us from an Islander standpoint, what happened from that point through the discussions today? And what do you have to do, you know, as a player, as a team, as an NHLPA going forward, you know, once games resume to make sure the message stays strong?
Yeah, so, you know, we had obviously just got off the ice last night when you asked me about this, and we were clearly not as informed as we are today about what was going on in the other leagues, and had an opportunity to see what the NBA had done, the MLB and so forth. Conversations last night, woke up this morning. You know, I was seeing these guys around here in the bubble, and we are, as a union, as a players, we got together and started having these conversations that we needed to have. And then we did the same as a team after our video session, looking forward to tonight. But we weren't sure what was going to happen, and we wanted to make sure we had these conversations first before anything, obviously. And I think just, you know, we came to understand and to really have that opportunity to support, you know, our fellow Black players in this league. And they weren't comfortable playing. We were right behind them. And I think, you know, that inclusion, that support that we have for them is, you know, extremely important. And there's a lot of stuff that, you know, I don't have the answers to moving forward, but it's a conversation. It's these times to reflect that we need to have as a group, as you know, not just in the hockey community, but outside of that as well. And, you know, I think, you know, continuing to do our best to make a difference is what we have to continue to do moving forward. And there's not a lot there. It doesn't sound like that, but the answers are out there, and hopefully we can find them.
Yeah, I actually reached out to him this morning. I only got a chance to play with Stewie for obviously this season, but I've gotten to know him really well and really respect him as a as a teammate and as a friend, and obviously him being a part of the Hockey Diversity Alliance. Just wanted to, again, reach out to him as someone, again, who's been involved in some of these other conversations that are being had and stuff like that. And obviously for us, I think, again, we're trying to do the right thing and looking for things we can do to show support and kind of be a part of this. And that was kind of the reason why a few of us reached out to him, to try to, again, start some of these conversations and just, again, see what we could do to try to help things in this case.
So Chris Stewart's brother, Anthony, of course, working with us on Hockey Night in Canada. Blessed to have that opportunity. Just to give you the lay of the land, we will go for another few minutes here. Harnarayan Singh is standing by. We will also have Don Fear, the executive director of the PA, but we'll do that into Sportsnet Central. As soon as we are kind of completing Hockey Central, we'll hand off, but they'll go till 10 o'clock tonight, and lots more on this. Hashtag the conversation. Harnarayan, do you hear Ron?
I do, Ron.
Well, listen, delighted to have you. Go ahead. What are you feeling? What are you thinking about tonight?
Well, you know, first and foremost, it's just you're sick to your stomach to see what's going on. And I really feel that, you know, the hockey world, the basketball world is in their own bubble right now. But when you reflect on it, we're all in our own bubble, and we all look at everything happening in the world through our own lens. And I think what we really need to do as a society is to step back, wear other people's shoes, and see the world through their eyes. And when you do that, you realize we have a really big problem in our society. And what is sickening and what is gut-wrenching and, you know, the fact that this problem is getting worse. There is a lack of respect and dignity for others. There is a lack of value on other people's lives. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? I mean, the only reason we're sitting here even having this conversation, talking about this is because of what the NBA players decided to do yesterday. I'm glad to see the NHL players on board today. And so this is sending a message. This is gaining attention, and it's a monumental moment in sports history right now, something that will be remembered. You and Peter Mansbridge talking about what happened in the 60s. This is going to be remembered for decades to come. And so we have to figure out now, the hockey world, we need a plan. We need tangible goals. I think everybody needs to sit down together and figure out, okay, when this happens again, because the problem is it's not a question of if. When this happens again, what are we going to do? What are we going to say? How are we going to react? And we need to work towards tangible goals. You saw the Milwaukee Bucks able to get state officials on the phone. In the hockey world, let's have that discussion. Players, officials, teams, media, let's figure out what do we want from this. And I think we've been talking about it for a long time. Your show Within Conversation, I had a chance to be on it. You, instead of talking about hockey through that pause, the entire time you were talking about this topic, about racism, about equality, and there's been a lot of talk. So we just got to figure out how to put this into action. And I think that's the crossroads that everyone's at right now.
You know, I was saying, Harnarayan, obviously you can touch on the Vancouver Canucks' role in this, which is very interesting for you in the Lower Mainland, Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. I don't have to tell you, that's one of the epicenters of our coverage on that show. But Dr. Courtney Sito, she helped with this policy paper on anti-racism. Sorry, Sully, I'll hold it there if you want to put it on that camera. But this was a paper from a Queen's University get-together over a year ago. Courtney Sito lives in the Lower Mainland, a great little hockey player and a great prof there. She does a lot on intersectional injustice. Renee Hess at the Black Girl Hockey Club in Vancouver does an incredible amount. They're tired. Like you, Harnarayan, the phone rings every time we have a social injustice conversation, and it's on them. Maybe you can speak, and I'm sorry to bring Courtney, you didn't say you're tired tonight. I'm just giving an example of what you must feel, or do you? Are you now inspired or invigorated by watching what we watched tonight, or are you just about at here?
Well, you know what, Ron, you mentioned the Vancouver Canucks, and I think that there was a lot of, it was almost heartwarming for the South Asian community to see that and find out, as we heard in the news, that the Canucks were a catalyst in moving forward this conversation to where we're at right now with the games being postponed. And I saw the We Are All Canucks hashtag being used by a lot of other South Asians. And, you know, I would hope the Canucks players, not very many people of color on the team, but Manny Malhotra is on the coaching staff, and the vastly diverse fan base of the Vancouver Canucks. You would hope the players had that in front of them in their minds when they decided to do this and reach out to Ryan Reeves and talk to the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's an unbelievable time we're in where you do reflect on it from your own personal experience. I mean, I've been to hockey arenas where I was, called Taliban or raghead, or, I look at it when in Phoenix after 9/11, a Sikh gentleman with a turban, a gas station owner, was just shot point blank. And I'm not saying that my experience or the community's experience is exactly the same as what's going on with the Black community. By any means, I'm not comparing that at all. But you look at it and you reflect on it, and what it shows is that this problem of racism is rampant in society. And I think, Courtney Situ has done so much to talk about this. Hockey Night Punjabi, we are continually, as you mentioned, Ron, you get this a lot, we get this a ton, that whenever something happens like this is the conversation we need to have. And I want to say to all of those people, you're talking about the hashtag in conversation on social media. You get this. So many people I know out there get this. I get this, that, oh, just shut up and talk about hockey. Like, why are you talking about this? But that is the problem. You know what? Enough is enough. I'm sick of this. We have to talk about it because this is important. Black Lives Matter. And you can't just have somebody, doesn't matter who he is, what he did in the past. You can't have someone shot in the back 7 times at a point blank range with all these people around, other cops there. This has got to stop. This is not an isolated incident. This is happening all the time. It's probably going to happen again, unfortunately. And we got to figure out what to do as a society. I loved what Peter Mansbridge had to say about we need to see more diversity in books, in what children are watching. We need to get out there, as Kadri said, we need to go to the community. So there's a lot of work to be done, but this is a very important moment in sports history we are witnessing, and there's a lot to be done. That's all I can really say.
Well, I'm sorry, Harnarayan, but your phone's going to keep ringing. Congratulations on the book is coming out soon with a lot on that very matter. And thank you for the help tonight.
Thanks, Ron, for having me.
Harnarayan Singh of Punjabi Hockey Night in Canada and Hockey Night in Canada, of course, doing a wonderful job during the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. So that's our story for now. As mentioned, hashtag the conversation.